Hi everyone, my name is Anil Sedha. I'm the founder of Cloud Genie and Whistle, two innovative IT companies based in Winnipeg, Canada. And today I'm here to launch my very first podcast. And I do have Ms. Radhika Sharma from Toronto, who's a very active community participant, a news anchor, and she's got a lot of accolades to her name. So I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Radhika Sharma, and I am a journalist. I have been working in this profession for more than 12 years now. Today, I'm sitting with Anil Sedha, and we'll be discussing about new technological innovations in the industry of communications. So today, the topic of our discussion, Anil, let's talk about some of the key challenges that you have observed over these past years that you have seen enterprise organizations face.
Well, the biggest challenge for enterprise organizations is cost for their communications platforms. That's one of the biggest ones. The other bigger challenge is the type of capabilities they have and the way they communicate with their internal employees or their customers.
So do you think these challenges or these problems, they evolve over the years, or some things come up and some problems go away?
Well, to answer this question, let's look at a little bit of an historical background. When I started my career way back in the US in 2001, I was working for Quest Communications, which then became CenturyLink. Um, Most of the communication concepts were around the PSTN lines, the analog lines, and people used to picking up the old phones and then just actually dialing others and talking to them. So there was no other method to reach quickly to your peers. And then the mobile came, and then you suddenly got messaging and you got texts, SMS. And then in today's generation, we've got all these apps.
Mhm.
So that evolution has happened, but the challenges for the most part are still existing, primarily because there isn't enough innovation, I should say,
Mhm.
amongst the telecom providers
Mhm.
who are literally the backbone of North America, if I can put it that way, because they hold the frequency spectrums, they have these massive government contracts, they've got the infrastructure that has been in the past and even today majorly funded by governments. And
So,
yeah, go ahead.
yes, so it means that different sectors have different problems.
To a great degree, yes, because let's look at the government sector. They're all traditional phones, traditional telephony.
Mhm.
They don't want to use messaging solutions, even though now things are changing. Because, for example, emergency services needs to send out mass text messages, broadcast alerts.
Mhm.
But other departments of the government may not even engage with their clientele, which is us citizens,
Mhm.
over text messaging.
Mhm.
Whereas in the private sector, whether you are a small business, a medium business, or an enterprise, all three types of industries have their own challenges. A
Right.
small business is more focused on day-to-day communication,
Mhm.
just with the initial closer group of customers and
Mhm.
via their staff. A medium-sized business, on the other hand, wants to go out, do their marketing,
Mhm.
send out communications to a much larger audience.
Mhm.
They want to actually engage with with a large subset of their field staff, let's say. But enterprises, on the other hand,
Mhm.
are more focused
Mhm.
because they are the big companies. They have a subset of employees that will never engage with an external audience.
Mhm.
And then they have a subset of their employees who will always engage with an external audience.
Mhm.
And then they have this product faced marketing. Let's take a big example like Loblaw, for example.
Mhm.
They are a huge chain and they are an enterprise and they want to communicate with their retail customers. They have to reach out to them over messaging and other platforms.
Mhm.
But for their office staff, they don't care. I mean, they are. I just need you to be available on the phone,
Right.
and that's how it evolved.
Mhm. So now that you have given us an example that how these communication challenges they exist in different sectors and different organizations, do you think these challenges come even more to the foreground when it comes to people with disabilities?
Absolutely, that is a really untouched market today.
Mhm.
Most ISPs, most telecom platforms, even the next gen platforms of today are
Mhm.
not really taking into consideration people who have challenges in using communication platforms.
Mhm.
For example, um, someone wants to just pick up the phone and call someone else. They need to have special phones, or they need to be able to sense the touch and plan the digit dialing based on
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Next gen tools that are coming, which are AI driven, are primarily addressing that gap, where they're
Mhm.
allowing them to use speech to text.
Mhm.
They're allowing them to use neural capabilities, where they're
Mhm.
just saying a command and then you get a response back through a chatbot or through another
Mhm.
AI processing engine. And
Mhm.
then that's only the essence of basic communications. Now,
Mhm.
what happens if we take communications beyond that, where we say there is a person with a disability but running a business?
Mhm.
How do they run a business without having the tools, the right tools at their disposal?
Right.
And this is where communications challenge directly impact people with disability.
Okay. Then I'm sure every company has people who are 50 plus, 60 plus as well. So, what would you say about the challenges those people face when it comes to be working in these big organizations?
Well, the more research I have done and the more people I have spoken to, I come all constantly come into this comment. Hey, I'm not too technologically savvy, and go light on me, or I don't understand these terms. The way things are going are too fast for me.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
they are telling you right off the bat, and this is a major population base that is
Mhm.
being ignored
Mhm.
in the name of them being seniors or whatever, and not actually creating an open market for them where they can actually be customers of a different kind, where
Mhm.
you are focused on certain products with that are directly meant to cater to them. For example, what stops a telecommunications company to allow a senior to just do everything based on simple clicks, or
Mhm.
just use their voice for certain directions?
Mhm.
But the way the seniors have to use it has also got to be simple. They don't want to go through complicated mechanisms. Oh, you set it up this way and then it will work this way, and
Mhm.
find some tricks behind the scenes. So this is where, uh, even though companies have employees in that age range, they're
Mhm.
not really catering to them. Let's put it that way.
I totally agree with you. I remember when we all started getting our news from the websites instead of newspapers and televisions.
Yes,
So I think there was a huge chunk of population around the world that felt it very difficult to transition from newspapers and televisions to websites because they were like,
absolutely.
how can a news come in your handheld device? I mean, news means big.
Right.
So I agree that it's not only small organizations or medium organizations. Larger organizations, they have good number of population, good number of employees that are not very comfortable transitioning from one device to another. So how do you think we can overcome these challenges? Do you have anything in mind, or do you think there are a couple of steps that can be followed to solve these challenges?
Absolutely. See, when the focus is on the customer and not the product, you can solve a whole lot of challenges,
Mhm.
because you're building for the end user in mind.
Mhm.
And that's what we do at Whistle also, where,
Mhm.
and I'm not saying just us, but quite a few innovative companies.
Mhm.
Apple being one of the big ones that everybody talks about, the customer first and the customer experience before you actually use the product.
Mhm.
So similarly, companies have to change the way they think, change the way they innovate, they change the way they operate.
Mhm.
Let's be honest. You touched upon something very important and very simple to understand. Users transition from the traditional newspapers to websites. Now, today, we are asking them to transition from just websites to paywalls, where they have to pay to read a news article. And it's not an easy transition. But if you look at it on the telecom side, it's even more challenging, because these are things that they could previously physically touch, just like the newspaper industry. They had something in their
Mhm.
hand. And
Mhm.
now we are telling them, you know what, we can just uh, beam an image on your wrist, for example, and you can press certain digits, or you can just say a command in your headphone or an AirPod,
Mhm.
or some other device, and
Mhm.
then it will listen to you and act on it. But if you really look at the essence of it, they have to set it up first before they can use it, which means nobody thought of the underlying challenges or the basic principles of how does a customer really consume your service.
Mhm.
Yes, you are giving them the service, but
Mhm.
how do you onboard them to
Mhm.
consume that service is also very important. And
Mhm.
this is one sector where all the innovation has to make sure that you are addressing major different markets and not just
Mhm.
ignoring certain things, because
Mhm.
getting out the product or getting your technology in front of certain
Mhm.
people is all that matters.
Right. Now that you have given us a little bit more information that how can we solve these issues, what about people who are worried about their identity theft? What about companies making sure that the messaging that is going out is protected? So, what about privacy laws?
So privacy laws have been breached for the longest time lately.
Mhm.
And I mean, when I say lately, they're just growing in significant numbers lately. But
Mhm.
forever, you people could mask voice of certain celebrities primarily,
Mhm.
or key important people. But now it's happening to individuals where
Mhm. Mhm.
people are being their voice is being masked, and people are making calls to the banks and actually changing certain account information and whatnot. So this will keep continuing until there are controls in place.
Mhm.
AI is going to make it even more challenging
Mhm.
to address the issue, because there's always going to be new ways to fix it, or at least create a barrier where spam messages can continue, and what other mechanisms exist. So what I think has to happen, and what we are doing at Brazil, at least, I can tell you from personal experience, is that we are changing the way the access controls are put in place and the way the privacy controls are put in place. We have certain things coming up in the pipeline, but in the immediate current situation, what we are doing is we are making sure that the platform goes through a verification process for every company or user that we onboard, so
Mhm.
that we don't allow just anybody to use our platform. I know that we may potentially lose some customers who may not want to kind of give personal information or
Mhm.
identity information, but
Mhm.
without verification of any individual or company or organization, we just don't want to contribute to the growing menace of privacy issues and
Mhm.
identity theft. So we purposely decided that we'll be the different company. We'll adopt a culture where we respect that. And today, FCC and CRTC both have come out with laws. They are called Stir Shaken, and they ensure that only authorized organizations or vetted organizations can actually gain an identity score, so that when you receive a call, it should say trusted caller.
Mhm. Interesting. So, does this mean that no company now, let's say, if right kind of privacy laws are put in place, so companies won't be able to sell their customer data to other companies?
So that is a little bit overarching. So that also requires formal laws and regulations. So today, a lot goes in the name of commercialization of technology.
Mhm.
A lot goes in the name of becoming a big organization, or presenting social media in a different way. Let's put it that way. That's how
Mhm.
they
Mhm. Mhm.
capture most of your data. Um, we at Whistle, we thought that when a customer signs up for
Mhm.
our services, we very clearly state everything in our terms and conditions. And we made it a concept that we are not going to actually sell any of our customers' data to anybody, however big they are. Because when you do that, you are exposing certain information that the customers trusted you with in the first place. And that's how you became who you became.
Mhm.
And as this area expands,
Mhm.
the conversation expands. The challenge that is going to happen is uh, companies have to build their own frameworks, and these frameworks have to adhere
Mhm.
to regulatory laws for the entire country, not just for a certain section of the industry,
Right.
because that's where the gaps happen, where they're industry focused gaps and not national focused approaches. So Some countries have a concept that for lawful purposes, you have to present access to confidential information or conversations. Now, that's a valid, legit reason, and that also, as long as it goes through a formal process so that the process is not being abused, it's good. But if it's not, then nobody has any control. And down the road, this will get even worse, where none of us will have any personal data. It is all just public data because it's just all over the place.
Perfect. So coming back to our topic, that what are the communication challenges? Do you think there is any other topic or any other thing that you would like to talk about, which is important, prominent, but of course exists within small, medium, and big enterprises?
Well, it's the innovation that I primarily feel is a big challenge.
Mhm,
When we talk about products out there, there's dime a dozen products out there,
mhm,
technologies that can touch every aspect of your business need.
mhm,
But sometimes the focus is too narrow.
mhm,
Sometimes the focus is not there at all. It's just scattered all over the place, and
mhm,
just trying to pick up the pieces and see what works for you. And
mhm,
and and the key thing is cost has to come with some value. And
mhm.
if you don't have value for your investment, then you don't really benefit. And that's what all small businesses, medium businesses, and enterprises
Right.
struggle. I was just
Absolutely.
doing some research last night, and what I found is that 48% of customers today will be willing to switch their voice provider or telephone provider or voice over IP provider or even unified messaging provider instantly if they were not locked into a contract, which tells you the level of discontent and dissatisfaction companies have with it. Um, on,
Right.
on the other side of the spectrum, companies less than 500 employees,
Mhm,
only 8% across North America have
mhm.
access to unified communications. So that tells you there's a big gap
Big
in this
gap.
space.
Yes.
And that talks a little bit about the challenges that create these big gaps. Related to these challenges, when I look around in our community organizations, let's say just social
Mhm,
fabric,
mhm,
whether it is a nonprofit, whether it is a seniors organization, whether it is your cultural organization or your
mhm.
community centers or someone actually providing help to the needy.
Right.
None of these organizations have good communication
I
mechanisms.
agree. Mhm,
Almost none. And the ones that are big, they do have some capabilities because they are a little bit of a larger nonprofit.
mhm.
But most nonprofits, they don't really have these capabilities, which tells you, and there's a huge sector of nonprofits, which tells you that there's a large section of the audience or the businesses or the populace that is going unserved because of the challenges or the lack of innovation in the voice and messaging industry.
Oh, I
What do
agree.
you think in the news media? Do you think you run into the same type of constraints?
Yes, first of all, yes. But then now that you were saying about talking about NGOs, let me tell you, it's absolutely correct. So a lot of times we ask people, okay, what are the ways people can reach out to an NGO? And then I have seen people saying, oh, I have a Facebook, I have a WhatsApp, I have a Twitter, I have Instagram, I have this, I have that. But they have 7 or 8 different channels through which they say that people can reach out to them. And sometimes, somewhere, some messaging is lost. It's difficult for everybody to keep a person or keep an employee that keeps the messaging consistent. And somewhere down the line, the messaging is lost. So there is no consistency.
And imagine they run using volunteers. Now
Right.
volunteers cannot find messages across different platforms, or it might be on the volunteers' phone, for all you know.
Absolutely. No, yes, absolutely. And that is the reason, maybe, probably, this could be a reason that why people are not getting the kind of help they would like to have when it comes to these NGOs. Let's say I'm an immigrant, I came to Canada, and then I realized that, okay, I would need couple of things, I would need help with couple of things. But then again, how would I reach out to those NGOs that are providing help? So 7 different ways to reach out to them. It would be great if we could collaborate, if we could amalgamate all those things in one
Yeah.
particular platform. And then maybe that's how we can kind of lessen the gap between the communication.
Yeah, and see, that's exactly what Whistle is about. You just
Hmm.
said what we do. So this is what we do. We integrate all of these different apps from so many different platforms into
Mhm,
one single platform and a
mhm,
single
mhm,
dashboard, so
mhm.
that nobody has to go searching for specific communication and they don't lose messages. And the transition or a handoff between shifts or between people is very easy and transparent. So on that note, I know we are just running out of time. So thank you very much for joining me on my very first podcast. I highly
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time and I look forward to having more such conversations down the road and your perspective on a whole lot of other topics. Thanks very
Oh,
much.
thank you very
Is-
much, Anil. It was such a pleasure talking to you. And thank you very much for sharing such vast information about so many different things. And I also look forward to speaking with you in future soon.
Thank you. So to all our viewers watching, thank you very much. Please do join in at our next podcast. We'll try to do some of these live, but we are happy to receive any feedback as well. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.